Yo, what up, basketball world? Welcome back to the Made Hoops podcast. This is episode number 3. Man, thank y'all for rocking out with us. We've been getting some really good momentum. So we're back at it again for another great episode. And look, to start things off, we've got a special guest in the building. I feel like we say special guests all the time, but this is an OG special guest, a big-time heavy basketball influencer and a guy who's done an incredible job in impacting a bunch of kids and helping them develop their games and basketball careers. So without further ado, man, I want to take the time to introduce you all to Book Richardson, Coach Book Richardson. He's the head coach of the 8th grade New York Gauchos. And look, Coach, man, we're glad to have you, brother. How you feeling this morning?
I'm blessed. I'm up. Thank you for having me, Austin. It's a pleasure. Like I said, anything I can do for you guys, especially with Made Hoops, that the brand is just incredible, and it's nothing like it in the country and or the world. So I'm honored to be on here.
I love it. Coach, really quickly, man, you've got some great ties to guys like Chad and guys like Eek, man. Just talk about how your relationship has flourished over the years being a part of the Made Hoops brand.
Watching, Chad Babel as a sophomore in college, watching his rise, watching his grind. I think some people talk about meteoric rise, and it hasn't been. When you watch his grind, when you watch with Made Hoops, I think this is, year 8 or 9, maybe more, but being involved in it, watching what's happened on the West Coast, didn't really see what he saw until I was actually in Phoenix watching guys like Mookie Cook, and I'm like, watching him as an 8th grader, like, man, this is pretty special. This is pretty cool. And then understanding his vision and understanding his platform, and then watching guys like Eric and Rob involved, and then and it's like, wow, watching my nephew, little B, Edwin McFadden, like, it's a family affair. Then I'm looking at Kyle Babel, and you watch all those guys grow up, and they're flourishing in this space, and it's like I said, it's a testament to the Made Hoops brand, but also their will and passion and how hard they work. And like I said, everyone looks at the production. Everyone looks at the movie. Man, hey, we enjoyed Avengers or whatever movie that you enjoy.
Yeah,
you watched that for a couple hours, but you didn't realize the production that it took to get to that end product, to that end goal. So that's kind of how I look, especially with Chad, just watching him grow up, being family with him. And like I said, just the success that Made has been, tremendous.
Well, you mentioned a really good analogy, Coach. You talked about the production that goes into, making the Made Hoops events pop and making everything flow. But you yourself have been involved with some big time production in regards to basketball, man, and impacting players and player development. And so tell us really quickly, man, talk to us about the Gauchos, man. If there's one thing you would want everyone to know about the New York Gauchos, first off, what would that be?
Our culture, who we are as a program, who we are as a team, what we've done. You talk about over 50 years that program has flourished. It's had its way more ups than downs, but just in terms of who we are, that brand is extremely strong. And you watch, if you're watching a college game, if you're watching an NBA game, any kid that's been that's played in New York City, over the last 50 years has either played with, the New York Gauchos or Riverside Church. And then, in the last 15 years or so, things have, flourished a little bit more where you have more grassroots programs. But I'm just telling you, there's no other program like it in the world. And, I've had people debate me on what's the greatest program, and the test of time, 54 years. Some programs are around 4 years. Man, we got these pros, and it's like, guys, you can't compare. The only other program that could compare is or compete, is Riverside Church Hawks, which was Metro Hawks, and back to Riverside Church, but there is no comparison. And I think we're the flagship program in the country, and all I'm trying to do is bring that back, and at least at this, in the 8th grade space, become a little bit more formidable to be better in the high school space. But there was an amazing analogy that one of my staff members was like, the Gauchos will have 12 or 13 kids playing in the EYBL this spring and summer. Because again, based on who we are and what we have, we have this incredible gym. We have this event space, this facility, and you have great coaches there, such as Mike Williams, Tom Mushat, Derek Henry. You have really good coaches. You have really good guys, and like I said, my director, Earl Elliott, I think he does a good job of allowing us to run our space.
I love it. I love it. Well, respect to you guys, Coach. I mean, listen, growing up, I got to be honest. Like I knew all about the Gauchos, man. Like that, listen, you always heard about New York basketball, and it's been incredible to see, again, like you said, how that program has stood the test of time, and longevity is ultimately the biggest result of long-lasting success. And so again, man, it's credit and kudos to you and what you guys have been able to build over the years. And I know you talked about it, but like personally for you, Coach, like what does being a part of the Gauchos mean for you personally?
Well, for me, being a part of the Gauchos brings back respectability, not only through the city but through the country. There's not a lot of people who've been immersed in grassroots basketball or AAU basketball who can say we don't know who the Gauchos are. And that's what it's been for me to reestablish our claim in terms of being competitive. We always talk about having a highly competitive environment, and I think twofold for the Gauchos, but also for New York City basketball, trying to make sure that we can be as strong as we possibly can. We can also figure some things out in terms of how do we become strong again. And I'm not saying that New York City is ultimately down or we're up, but I definitely think we can be better. I don't think the country is seeing the best version of New York City basketball.
Yeah. Well, New York City basketball, still like you said though, but I mean, it's still one of the premier places for basketball in the world. I mean, that I'm just going to be brutally honest, and that's a fact. And again, you go back to the history, and when you have credibility for what you've done, oftentimes we look in the moments like now, but at the same time, you can't go erase a record book. You know what I'm saying? You can't go erase history. And so, like I said, it's clear to see that you all have implanted a flag, not just on grassroots basketball, but on basketball of all levels based on the success you have. So I got some good questions I do want to ask you to at the end, but I want to go ahead now. Let's talk about your team you've got this year at the 8th grade level. First off, how's your overall East Coast Winter Circuit been going for your team?
I'm telling you, the competition is unlike anything, at least, for me in the world. And I say the world because I've been fortunate enough to travel the world, watching basketball, playing basketball, coaching basketball. And when once you deal with this 8th grade team, 2026, I've had people tell me, hey, you should get rid of that team. Mm-hmm. And I kind of laughed, was like, you still got to coach them through. Kids develop a little bit differently. Right. Our 2025, they were monsters. We 8 tournaments, 4 championships, 2 Final Fours, an Elite 8, and losing the championship game. That was 2025. Yeah. And what I'm proud about, especially with that group, you have 4 guys who started for me who are now starting on their varsity teams. And by the way, doing well. Wow. So again, you talk about that culture and that transition. My job is to make sure that when they get to high school, that they're going to be as prepared as they humanly can be in that space. So those 2026, I think, is a special group, but they're a little bit different than the group before them and the group after them. Like our 2027 group, we have two teams, and they're both phenomenal. Mike Zielinski has done an awesome job, coming over with the Ivy brand, and now they morphed into the Gauchos. But I'm looking at what they're doing, and I'm saying, like, it's unreal. Zielinski, Johnny Magna, like those guys have been tremendous and awesome for me. And then I look at, Derek Henry for what he's doing in, a makeshift 2026 team. We go through some stuff. By the way, 2027, he's done an awesome job. And I look at our coaches here, like Rob White. We are doing a tremendous job. Those guys, in terms of teaching, preparing, and therefore that group, special group, and like I said, man, a kid like Trey Lawrence, who I think is one of the best kids in the country. JJ Addison, I think is one of the best kids in the country. Rich Jackson, PJ Singleton, like those guys, I try my best to give them as much credit as possible, but if they don't win, then they don't get the credit. And therefore, we have a pretty good record. So they're getting some acknowledgement. And that's pretty cool for them and the program.
That is awesome, man. That you got me excited now, man. Make sure I catch these teams this year. Book, you're a Made Hoops veteran. You've done this for some time, and you mentioned sometimes there will be some growing pains for younger players or players who maybe not have had the same experience before. How do you prepare players that have never had a chance to step onto the Made Hoops circuit, and it's like all of a sudden, boom, now they're here? What do you tell them? How do you encourage them?
Yeah. What you do in practice, your culture, coming from a college background, you practice way more than you play.
Right.
So again, you can go into a Made Hoops and have 4 games. But before those 4 games, again, we look at ourselves, we may have 20 practices. What you do in that moment, and you've already been prepared. So the terminology, the hay is in the barn.
Yeah.
The work is already done. Now you have to go play. Again, it's now the movie. You put all the production in. So our guys, we talk about culture. We talk about what we want to do on defense. We talk about how we want to play in transition. We talk about how we want to play. And then, like I said, now you got to go implement it. But I think we also have, I got a young kid, Aaron. Aaron's a 6th grader in my 8th grade practice. So, I have 7th graders in my 8th grade practice.
Yeah.
Zaza, again, those younger guys, they are being prepared and groomed for the rigors of varsity, quote unquote, varsity basketball, because this is varsity basketball in middle school.
Right.
You're as an 8th grader, you're a senior. And, what's your legacy? I never talk about, well, don't ride the coattails of what 2025 did. 2026, what did you do? Hey, 2027, don't ride the coattails of what 2026 did. What did you do? And so on and so on and so on. And when you get guys in your practice, again, there's no, hey, Aaron's a 6th grader. They're looking like he's here.
Yeah. Fact.
I don't look at you as a 12 or 13. You're in practice.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's as real as it gets. I mean, and that's how, again, you talk about culture. That's how you continue to build a culture of consistency, because again, no matter how old you are, man, you stepping up to the plate now. Like it's time. That the age stuff goes out the door. And I love that. I love that analogy on that. And again, some of the other things you said, Coach Book, were great. And so with that, what are some other lessons that you talk to your kids about, whether it be on court or off court? What are maybe 2 or 3 things that you really try to drive home to them?
I always talk about don't never tell me who you are. You'll show me who you are. That one's simple. And I always talk about good people make bad decisions. We're gonna make mistakes. Who are you? I'm gonna judge you if I can, because I try my best not to judge. But if I judge you, I'm gonna judge you on what you did after the mistake. Yeah. We're imperfect. And I try to share this with parents. Think about us as kids. If we were to receive all the messages and all the blessings, there would be no mistakes.
Yeah.
And some of us are better learners, and some of us need to touch the fire to see how hot it is. Hey, the fire is hot. No, it's not. Well, how hot is it? Okay, well, put your hand in there. Some of us understand we don't have to touch the fire. Some of us put hands and feet in the fire.
Yeah.
So, for us, especially with the younger guys, trying to make sure that they understand that we are a band of brothers. Right. And I'm not just your brother in positive. I'm your brother all the time. And those are the things that you really want to tell these younger guys, because they don't know. Everything is based on social media. How many likes you get. I've had kids tell me, hey, when I post something serious, no one likes it. But when I post me being a fool, they like it. I said, well, you got to change your followers, maybe. I don't know. I'm not a social media guru. But I think part of what you get into is, like, I had a conversation this morning, and it talked, it was basically about our kids. And this is what I tell my guys. I'm glad I didn't have social media at 13. I'm not sure what I would have done. I was a handful anyway. So to have that monster, oh man. So, we're now dealing with something that we've never had, and we're so opinionated on it. Oh man, social media is the devil. Well, it's unfortunately it's kind of the sign of the times, and it's based on what you do with social media. Like money isn't the root to all evil. People are the root to all evil.
Yeah, I see that. Nah, that makes a ton of sense. And again, that's the entire landscape of basketball now in terms of, media and attention, and just players having to deal with that as another major distraction. I mean, there are plenty of them, but now with the cameras and the media and the video, man, there's so many different things that can take guys' focus. So, man, it's music in my ears to hear you say that and talk about that being a pillar in your program and a pillar of how you try to mentor these kids and impact them to get them to think long term and think of the best value for themselves. Now that's great stuff, Coach. That's great stuff. I want to talk to you a little bit about guard play, and there's a span of questions I'm going to ask you about, man. And I think it's going to be great for our listeners today. First off, Coach, what makes NYC guards different? Like, talk to us about the style and play of New York City guards, and we always have conversations about, oh, West Coast guys play this way, that guys from down south play this. You've been an OG up in New York City. What makes the guard play different up there?
Yeah, the competitive atmosphere, because you have so many of us that look alike, that in terms of same height, same body type, same ability, but toughness and grit. And that's kind of been the thing that I think we missed, because there's some tremendous trainers across the country, especially in New York City. But I think what happens is the game has become a little bit more individualized, where, you got cone work, which is good, but you have to be able to compete. And I think we've lost our edge in terms of competing, where it's like, you know what? No, we're going to play 1-on-1, or we're going to play 2-on-2. We're going to play 3-on-3, or I'm going to have to play against this older dude who just came home from work, right? 24, 25-year-old dude he's a little pissed off. I'm 15 or 16. He's going to teach me what a good shot is, because he's only going to pass it to me when I'm open. And I think we've gotten away from that. And I think what really makes us special is that you have a court on every corner. So your level of competition is at a high rate, and I've always gone back to the notorious B.I.G. He said a quote: either you sling crack rock or got a wicked jump shot. That's kind of how you figured out how to get out. Yeah. That was your route. And what made, and again, what continues to make us special, I think, is the level of, competitive nature, the juices. You have a hood with you. If I'm from the Bronx and I'm playing someplace, the Bronx is coming with me. If I'm from Harlem, I'm going someplace, Harlem's coming with me. Yeah. If it's Brooklyn, they talk about big Brooklyn, they coming with me. If it's Queens get the money, they coming with me. So again, it's much more on your back. And whether the pressure's good, bad, or indifferent, it's there. And once you've established who you are at a young age, it stays with you. So it's like such and such is going to play against such and such. We there. Yeah. And that's kind of how it's always been. My block, my borough, my block, Bronx. We going to play. We going to play in Manhattan. Or, oh shit, it's a money game. So those are the things that I think that really transcended who we are, and to now it's a little bit more individualized. We have to continue to compete, but that's what truly I think makes us different, because there is a level of competition, and there is a level of, when you're 8, 9 years old, you hate to lose more than you love to win. Yeah.
Nah, that's a fact. I mean, you've seen that over the years too. Like, I'm from Atlanta, but like, I've got OGs and mentors who are from New York, who taught me a lot about the game, and you can see how the mindset, the competitive nature, how it's the same way. How, man, it's a family almost. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that's always been dope to see, babe, with the boroughs and everything about New York City is everybody got each other's back from where they're from respectively. So that's definitely something I've caught an eye on, man. And I've seen that kind of just continue to transcend over the years. I want to ask you about this, Coach, because I saw a picture on Instagram of you and Kemba Walker. Now, for me, Kemba Walker has always been one of my favorite point guards. I mean, you talk about a guy who has literally just made an impact on the game, and with odds against him. You know, you talk about being in Charlotte, now being back home in New York. And I know early this season, he had the stretch where I think he sat out for a little bit, but he came back and was cooking. And I've always been a believer in Kemba Walker, but I saw the picture with you and him. So my question to you, Book, is I just want you to talk about, man, your relationship with Kemba and I guess your impact, man, on his playing career and his journey.
That's my baby, you know, and I say that with all due respect because he's a grown man now in his 30s. And, you know, again, so he may feel like baby, but you talk about being involved in a kid's life since he was 14 years old. And, you know, again, his mother doesn't get enough credit because what she did was his mother and father allowed me to coach him. His brothers and sisters allowed me to coach him hard. They allowed me to really get the best out of him. And he believed. And what really made Kemba great was he competed all his life. Like everyone talks about, man, he back-to-back Pete Jam championships, right? No one talks about that. But when we talk about winning, that culture, well, also he went to Rice High School. So I'll say this. In practice, he had to deal with, think about this, Jordan Theodore, Seton Hall, wow, all Big East. Truck Bryant, all Big East, West Virginia.
Yeah.
Durant Scott, ACC Player of the Year. Chris Fouch, one of the all-time leading scorers at Drexel, one of the best three-point shooters ever in the Colonial. Man. And then you start to say, that was just practice. Now, that was AAU. High school, he dealt with Edgar Sosa, Louisville, Momo Jones, Arizona, Iona. Durant Scott, again, as I say, Miami, ACC Player of the Year, Chris Fouch. There was never a day off. And what he did was he bought into it. He never ran. His mother never said, when's it his turn? I said, Kemba, make it your turn. UConn recruited him. Yo, my man, you're not good enough, but that's okay. You're going to get better. Everyone talks about, the step back. We worked on that to create space because he's a smaller guard. It wasn't to put him on a mixtape. It was to help him get a shot off. When all else fails, you have to be able to manufacture a shot so they can rebound it because you got some hogs and some monsters that played at UConn. Freshman year at UConn, think about this, Jerome Dyson, AJ Price, Craig Austrie. I want to say I think Dougie Wiggins had transferred. This dude competed all of his life. Yeah. Freshman year, Final Four. A testament that his sophomore year, they weren't able to play in the tournament. His junior year, they win it. Then, by the way, he graduates. He becomes a lottery pick. Kemba came down to Arizona to work out with our guys. No one would know, like he would come work out with guys like TJ McConnell. He loved to compete. Yeah. Wow. That's what made him different. That's why he's been in the NBA for so long. He's had a shoulder. He's had a block on his shoulder. He didn't have a chip. He had a block because he had to compete. Everything that he got, he earned. And that's when you talk about a culture. All those guys. Yeah. Because again, everyone that I named were either all Big East or all conference. Yep. They played in the tournament. Like if you look at those kids, their winning percentage, it's through the roof. Mm-hmm. But guess what? They did that with the Gauchos. Again, back to back. There was a span where we didn't lose in 6 months. Also, 2025, there was a span. We didn't lose in 4 or 5 months. Winning is an expectation. And when you do that with a kid like Kemba Walker, with a man like Kemba Walker, Jordan Theodore, Truck Bryant, Durant Scott, Chris Fouch, Danny Jennings, those guys, man, what they did was they allowed me to coach them. They played extremely hard for me. They played extremely hard for the brand, But guess what? All those guys became successful, and it worked itself out. Kimber just happened to probably be the most successful of the group, but there's none of those guys I don't look at, as I get emotional now, there's none of those guys that I don't look at like my sons, a nephew, or anything like that, because they succeeded in life. They got their degree, man, and they're productive humans, in life.
That's the win right there. I mean, sheesh, that's big time. And I hope that everyone tuning in really paid attention to that last factor that Book was talking about, because of the simple fact that they became successful even past high school and college. Like a lot of people, a lot of times, like you said, Book, like it's like, oh, league or not, nah, man, like you made successful citizens and people that are making a positive impact in our community now. You got kids to school for free. And then on top of that, like getting multiple kids there going high majors, one thing, but then you talked about the success and accolades they had during their time there. So again, we talk about that longevity word, man, it speaks for itself. But we got like a few minutes left, so I want to throw one more question out there, man. And again, bro, we're grateful for your time on today's episode. You listed a bunch of heavy hitting names when you talked about that group you had with Kim, but we know your group right now that you got in 2026 is going crazy. But let me ask you this: top 5 Gauchos of all time. But you got to give me a list, baby.
Damn, that's that. Damn, Austin, that it's tough because of so long. One guy who definitely, and before I even say that, like one of my all-time favorite Gauchos is Tu Holloway.
2 hours.
Like no one talks about Tu playing with the Gauchos. That's my baby. That's my heart.
Wow.
And then a guy like Mark Lyons, I coached. He was playing in Albany, and I started coaching him with the Gauchos. So he's kicking Kimber's ass in the game, and I'm coaching him, and they're looking at me, and I'm like, those are the things. Because I just, and I'm fortunate enough to coach him in college. But Lloyd Daniels is arguably one of the best Gauchos ever. Kenny Anderson, Rod Strickland.
I know.
Damn, like, because I don't want to be disrespectful to the guys
right
before, and I definitely, but those 3 stand out. Mm-hmm. Those 3 stand out to me. A lot of people, because I get asked this question, is Kimber in there? And I'm like, if I say yes, it's because, oh, well, you coached them. It's like, I can also look at, dude's a 4 or 5-time All-Star. That's really hard to do. Right. He would be 4, and it's like I said, man, there's guys like Jerry Ice McCullough who were animals, man. Russ Smith Jr. just got his number retired in Louisville. Yeah. Like how do you not have him in there? And like I said, having the chance to be around Russ younger, things like those guys were the ultimate underdogs. They just hooped. Russ's pops, check this out. He would always hit me with, Book, let him lace him up. Let him lace him up. Russ's ankle's broke. He good. Russ. So it's just like I said, Kenny Anderson, Lloyd Daniels. Sheesh.
Yeah, you mentioned Strickland. Yeah.
It's just tough, man. It's tough. Kimber 4. It's just, man, like I said, Jerry Ice McCullough, like, because it's affectionate to me because he used to wear me out. We played against each other in high school. Yeah. So I got to respect what he did as a Gaucho. But right. Those teams were incredible, man. Like those teams you just go back to, Eric Mobley, God rest his soul, Conrad McCray, God rest his soul, those guys. Jamal Mashburn.
Yeah.
That might be my 5th.
Yeah. Damn. Look,
how do you so, and I'm missing 50.
I know that's what I'm saying. There's probably a bunch of names out there too that you can still say.
Dave Britton, and because I'm trying to make it relevant to the listener as well. But guys like Dave Britton, the first Gaucho, like it's like Captain America. Like he was the first.
Yeah.
Dave Britton went to Texas A&M in the 80s, man. He turned it out. But no one talks about him. Arnold Bernard, Darryl Reed.
Yeah.
it's. I know you're saying, Book, come on, man, calm down. It's just tough when you talk about 5. Even if you said, Book, 10, if you said 15, you're going to leave someone off the list. That's pretty damn good.
Well,
but if I had 5, it would be Mashburn, Strickland, Kenny Anderson, Lloyd Daniels, and Kimber. And I'd say roll the balls out, man. Here we go. Because you got 5 guards. They're just from 6'9" to 6 foot.
No,
that's true positionless basketball.
Right. It is. But like you said, man, that I guess the thing that's most impressive is you're naming names that, again, you talk about longevity, bro, and especially with travel basketball now, the Gauchos brand, the Gauchos family, the Gauchos organization, you can see the impact and the imprint that it's had on travel basketball and how it's continued to progress through all levels. Man, that's amazing. That's all I can really say, Book. Wow. Well, Book, look, man, we almost out of time, but I want to tell you again, brother, from behalf of your Made Hoops family, man, we're grateful for having you, and it was truly a pleasure for you rocking out with us today. To all the listeners, look, you all got firsthand access, man, on the living legend today. Book Richardson, he's the 8th grade head coach of the New York Gauchos, one of the most historic programs in travel basketball history. Man, share this with a friend, pass it to a player. A lot of insight was dropped in this episode. So, Book, again, we appreciate you, brother. And for everybody tuning in, man, stay tuned. You know, we got more coming in store on the Made Hoops podcast. For now, as always, I'm your host, Austin Smith, signing out. We look forward to seeing y'all again on the next episode.
Austin, great job. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Yo, what up? What up? Welcome back, everyone. Part 2, episode 3 here of the Made Hoops podcast. As you can see right now, I'm joined by my 2 main guys, my partners in crime, my amigos, call them that. My man, Eric Hampford. We've got Rob Noonan on board with us here. And now we want to dive into the second part of this episode today, where we're going to talk about this crazy weekend we had in terms of the East Coast Circuit 3. I mean, big weekend in Spooky, Pennsylvania. A lot of action went down. First off, for you, E, and you, Rob, individually, man, have y'all recovered at all? Like, I know y'all probably had a lot of steps walking from court to court. Talk to me about that.
I mean, I think my recovery process is a little easier than Rob's. He's really on the front lines. Every dispute from coaches, referee issues, all that stuff. So it usually takes me probably, midday Monday to fully kind of get back into the mix. Rob, I think, is probably still battling through trying to get to that point.
I've been in my pajamas for like 2 days. I got home at like 10:30 at night, and like Sunday was hectic. My feet, like my Achilles is like bruised and swollen because it was just so many courts, and like Sunday there were just issues in terms of like it was like court by court. It's like, Rob, I need you over here, and I would go there and be like, while I'm solving that, somebody else would call me and be like, hey, come over here, and then somebody go to the back because it's playoffs for Futures Frenzy. So that was hectic. And then it got even more hectic now just because I'm doing playoffs and I'm announcing teams who are in the playoffs. So like before I even left the facility and got in the car, someone's like, hey, did I make the playoffs? I'm like, bro, I didn't even get in the car to go home yet. Like, I have no idea.
But at the same token, it's a gift and a curse, right? The platform we created. People care, man. They care a lot. Every game matters. They're invested. And that's what we want, right? So at the end of the day, it's just part of how this goes. We understand that everything that our teams, our coaches, our players, our parents do, it's because they really love this and they want to get the best out of the experience, just like we do. So I think at this point we're battling to get to Portland, but hey, it's something that we gotta get through.
Yeah, I knew that going home too, because like when I drove home, like I worked until like 12 just to get some of like the standing stuff out, because I'm like, I know people are just antsy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But we're gonna get there, man. We'll get there one step at a time. But I guess the good part about it too, though, is that the competition is continuing to get hotter and hotter. And players, simply put, players, teams, and coaches, they want to compete. Like you said, Rob, if your phone is blowing up that soon after an event, or not even before you leave, it's getting serious. And I love that because, again, like you said, E, everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to do a great job. And so we're seeing that now. And like we just saw that this past weekend at session 3. So let's keep talking. Let's go ahead and get right to it. Let's talk about some of the prospects that move the needle a little bit. Who caught y'all's attention? Eric, if you want to go first, Rob, if you want to go first, man, feel free. But let's list some of these prospects out who caught your eye early on.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know last pod we talked a little bit about how it was kind of, for me, my process is scaling back the layers, right? Session 1, session 2, you kind of get the headline guys that jump off the page, and now you try to dig a little bit deeper. For me, session 2, he was injured, and I knew he was going to be back session 3, so I had him on my radar. But DNA Elites, Adam Umadat, he killed. I mean, he really had a great weekend. He's, really confident, about 6'4" guard, super skilled, incredibly confident. He's a dude who's, he's a big reason that they're doing so well in the Green League. And truthfully, I think he would be, the same player for the most part in the Red League, right? Like he's a super talented kid. Ethan Hillsman for BABC. Overall, their programs continued to get better throughout the circuit. He was a guy who I really like, bouncy, 6'5", above the rim. Speaking of bouncy kids, kid for CP3, Jaquan Clay. He was the kid who had our made moment dunk of the weekend, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about later. He was very impressive. CP3 in general came back with a very healthy roster of talented, big, athletic kids, a group that I think is going to project really well. Another guy I really liked was Coley Mark for Expressions Elite. He's probably legit 6'8" plus at this point, can stretch the floor and shoot. On opening night, they didn't have their star AJ DeBonsa, so they needed somebody to step up. They had a big game, and Coley was the guy to do that. You could tell that he's getting more confident, honestly, by the session. He first popped onto the radar at our East MSA camp in June. He was probably about 6'5", 6'6", but looked like he was still just trying to figure out how to play the game and who he was, and to see some of the steps that he's taken in, what is it at this point, maybe 6-7 months is pretty impressive. So those are a few of the guys right off the top. Rob, you could jump in with a few, and then I can close with a few more, but the floor is yours.
I'll let you close it. Like I said, what back in the other podcast, I was like, I'll be running around with my head cut off from court to court. I got to watch a little bit. I got to watch a bunch of the teams. But as far as players, I know there's one kid that definitely popped out. And of course, it's a Jersey kid. I'm sorry. It's not a coincidence. Julius Savant, played with NJ Legacy, 6'5", kind of saw him. I'm trying to remember if I
think he's bigger than 6'5". I think he's legit 6'6", to be honest. I mean, he was somebody who I saw for the first time and was like, whoa, this past weekend. I mean, he's got a chance.
Yeah, like I just really noticed him, and I saw him hit a perimeter 3, and I was like walking away, and I stopped. I was like, wait, hold on. Like, let me watch 2 more minutes. And then like he hit a 3, and then he ripped the ball off the rim, went down the court, and finished with the layup. So he was doing a lot of things. He was handling the ball too. I was like, okay, like this. And I mean, shout out to Legacy overall, making the late playoff push. I texted Al Tariq. I was like, I'm going to be front row to a Legacy playoff push in session 3. And he's like, he sent me all the fire emojis. So they did their thing with the additions of obviously Richie and crew. And I'm looking forward to seeing them in championship weekend.
Yeah, with that NJ Legacy group, I mean, the catalyst for them is obviously Richie Rosa. Richie had a really big session 3. There's no denying he's one of the more skilled point guards in this 2026 class, not just on the East Coast. I thought he had a really strong weekend. Obviously, they've done a pretty good job with their overall roster construction this year. Outside of that, I mean, Rob, you kind of put me on the big boy from CB Elite. I think it's Arafan Diane. He's probably 6'10", an absolute load in the low block. Obviously, with kids that size at that age, they're not coming in and just dominating games, right? They're still trying to figure out how to get their coordination right. But he had some nice moments, and he was a kid who I saw him in the 8 a.m. game on Saturday. It's nice to see a kid kind of pop right away where you're like, oh, who's this kid? So that's a kid who I definitely have on the radar now. A few other guys, Dylan Mingo put together a nice weekend for New York Lightning, going through some growing pains right now. He's probably shot up to a legit close to 6'2", and it looks like he's still growing. So following in the footsteps of his brother, Caden Mingo, talented 2025 guard. I'm excited for what Dylan can be. Rob's other Jersey boy, Ikenna Alozie for NJ Scholars.
I told you he was a bucket.
He was dominant again, physical attacking wing, but not just him. Chidi Wigwe is another super talented guard that they have in that group. He had a big weekend. Team Durant as a group was impressive. I really liked Ace Meeks. He played really well as part of one of their talented backcourt members. A few other guys, team final, they have a solid front court piece in Drew Correa, who goes about 6'6", probably closing in on 6'7", skilled. I think the physicality of the league is doing well for him, and he's starting to really adjust and learn how to play against some of these bigger front court pieces. Team United, Josiah Johnson has been, really dominant every session of the way, bruising 6'4", 6'5" front court piece. Trey Beamer, I thought, did really well for them as far as a guy in the backcourt who was knocking down a ton of shots. Yep. And then a kid who I'm taking a bet on in the Green League, who it's probably going to take him a little bit of time to figure out, but he has all of the markers in terms of a kid who I think is going to shoot up and grow a ton and has genetics, is Jerry Johnson Jr. for Team Final Red. He goes about 6'1" now, all arms and legs. His dad was a big-time high school player here in Pennsylvania at Lancaster McCaskey High School, and then he went on to Ryder, where he had a great career there. So Jerry Jr.'s got some Division I bloodlines, and he looks the part early on. So he's a kid I'm definitely taking a bet on in that 2026 class.
Wow. Don't sleep on the Green League, by the way. People will dismiss the Green League just because, they think it's the second tier or whatever. You've had some studs. I mean, we've spoken about it in the past. I mean, we had Cooper Flagg last year and Ace. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, this year you just rattled off 3 names of guys who could be potential studs in their class who are projecting that way. So, I mean, for Arafan, he came to registration, like I looked up, and usually it's like, hey, what's your name? But like I was like, hey, what's your name? Massive.
He is massive. But like you said, you could have ended the conversation with Cooper Flagg played in the Green League. He was a top 5 player in the country in 2025. Like there's definitely a ton of talent no matter what league you look at on our circuits.
Yeah, talent across the board. A list of heavy hitting names that players came through and they made their mark. And I love that you all mentioned that about the talent being in both divisions. Because again, it's a lot of times, man, it's not where you start. Like, and again, the Green League may get, parent, oh, wow, no, look, if you can play, you can play. If Cooper Flagg showed it, clearly other guys will too. And so I love that, man, that both of you all acknowledge that. That's a really good look. And then again, like you said, these players are competing. They're playing at a high level, multiple teams and players across the board, and just good basketball all around. To let people know that the May Hoops League and brand has talent that you need to keep an eye on for the years to come. So let's keep moving forward. Let's talk about team success now. A bunch of different teams caught y'all's attention. Eric, if you want to start first again, brother, who'd you like and what teams really dominated over the course of the weekend at Spooky Nook?
I mean, the DMV is really holding it down. I mean, you have Team Takeover, you have Team Mellow, both continuing to get things done in that 8th grade Red League. At the end of the day, we know what it is. It's a guards game, especially at this level. And their guards are really doing the things that they need to do on both ends of the court. Outside of those groups, the NJ Scholars are continuing to improve and get better. Team CP3 had a great weekend as well. Team Durant, again, DMV guards, man, it looks like they've got a strong group between Baltimore and DC in this class. And it's not even so much like guys that you look at that are like, whoa, this kid's a long 6'3", strong over the rim. I mean, no, they have some just bulldog bully guards that are just offense, defense, no matter what, they're ready to get at it. So Team Durant's another good group. And then Expressions Elite is continuing to win. The only blemish they have is that team takeover loss in the overtime classic from session 2. So, you know, those are a few of the teams I really like in that red league. 8th grade, the green league, DNA Elite, Adam Umadoc, you know, he's the guy for that group, but he's not the only kid on that team. Derek Robinson Jr., talented guard. Tyson Harley's a kid I think who's going to evolve really well for them. And then Matt Mena has been with them as well as like a skilled 6'6" big. Outside of them, I mean, you have Team Takeover, you have DPS, the New York Wrens, Expressions, 8th grade green team is super talented with some big guards as well. And then that CB Elite group where you had some talented guards to start, and then you throw in a 6'10" guy like Arifan, and they're going to be able to cause some problems. As far as the 7th grade blue league, you know, it's Oladipo takeover, still undefeated, still doing what they need to do. But outside of that, you have
nothing.
What's that?
Could be takeover or nothing. Takeover Hart and takeover Oladipo, both undefeated in the 7th grade division on opposite sides.
Oh, there's no doubt. And then the Gauchos have done a really good job as far as both leagues, you know, 7th grade blue, 7th grade purple. Team Mellow, again, another strong 7th grade team. City Rock, strong team. Lightning and New Heights as well. I mean, what you're starting to see is a lot of these, it's not teams, it's programs, right? You have programs who have teams in almost every division, and they're getting the job done. In that purple division outside of the Gauchos, Team Final Red actually put together a very good 7th grade group. Westchester Athletics above all cost. And then in the 6th grade group of the young kids, you have Free Bands, NJ Scholars, Team United has a solid group, BABC, Takeover, E Green. They're always in the mix at that 6th grade level. You could always count on that. And then Legacy and the Rocks and Expressions again. So again, we're talking about some programs who really came into the league this year, and it's not just one team, it's a collective program effort.
Shout out to CP3 though for their 8th grade. They had to play 6 games this weekend, and now they were on the outside looking in for the playoffs, and now they're looking to be the 3 seed in their pool. I mean, 6 games is a lot of basketball at this level.
They came correct though. I mean, it's not like they came up here. They knew they were playing 6 games, and they brought the roster. You know, session 1, when we saw them at first, they were missing a key piece there in Cole Clower, who's about 6'4", dead-eye shooter, right? So like they have a team of athletic, strong dudes, and now you add a kid like Cole into the mix, and anytime he catches and shoots, you think it's going in. So they have a chance to win any game that they play. It's CP3's got a good group.
6 games is 6 games though. Like
it's a lot, no doubt.
I don't care what your roster is. Like, you got 6 games is a ton. I mean, I have a bruised Achilles from walking 20,000 steps.
Hey man, these young kids nowadays, Rob, they got like an Energizer pack in their bag, bro. Like they want to hoop. I mean, 6 games is a lot, but at the same time, with some a lot of these kids, they just want to hoop. So, and as long as the quality of the play is still there, you know, I guess they'll tough through it. They'll tough through it. We talked about CP3. So really quickly, there was a made moment that went viral. Okay. And seeing this video the first time as I'm scrolling through my Instagram timeline, I'm like, wait, hold on. Let me go back. This young fella dunked like he was a grown man. Okay. And I was impressed with Jaquan's Clay dunk from CP3. Tell me what you guys saw from that play. I mean, it's one thing for me to see it on my phone. You all being there. What did you think about that?
I mean, his athleticism was popping throughout the weekend in different spurts, right? Like you'd see him on like a chase down block off the glass where you were like, oh, okay. Or he'd get vertical, you know, on the block going up to finish a play and he's over the rim and you're like, oh, this kid's pretty bouncy. Yeah. I did not know he had that in him for a cockback over The kid he dunked on, it wasn't a 5'8" guard. It was Ethan Hillsman, who I talked about earlier in the pod. Ethan's 6'5". Ethan's bigger than Jaquan is. So it's not like this was some like, oh, just a big physical dude over a smaller guard. Unfortunately, I was on the court next door watching another game, but it was one of those moments where you hear everybody behind you and the gym was going crazy. And by the time I turned around, I saw him doing the head tap and I was just like, what did I miss? And immediately what I'm always doing in a situation like that, I'm looking for the videographers. I'm like, who got it? Was it someone on our team? Is it a parent? Am I going to have to run down a parent to get this footage? Luckily, there was someone there who had the video evidence, but we had to make sure that we got that because I knew it was bad. I just didn't know how bad, but it was one of the more impressive dunks I think that we've had probably in the past few years. I mean, the tape doesn't lie on that.
Yeah. What does that compare to AJ's dunk session 1?
Man.
No, wait, can I do like an edit? Like, are we gonna put that in the podcast? Like,
we can have both. We'll get it out on it.
Yeah. Now we'll have to do a side by side. There's no doubt. I think I'm gonna go with Jaquan's, right? Like, I love AJ, and obviously AJ's super talented. AJ's 6'7". I think Jaquan's like 6'3". So yeah. It's a different level, man. And he dunked over somebody bigger than him. It was a perfect moment, honestly.
All right, I agree. I missed it. It's like one of those things like where you hear it, like Eric said, and like you go run to the court, like for no reason. It's already over, but you still run to the court and you're like, well, maybe I'll get something.
Be there. No, just to be there. I mean, listen, there are a few things that cause me like to, scroll back up, then actually click on the actual May Hoops page to open the video and see it bigger. That dunk was one of them. I had to kind of regroup and be like, yo, man, young fella really got up on that one.
We're starting to have some of the other big outlets now reaching out. I know SportsCenter Next grabbed it this morning. I'll see who else does, but I mean, it's one of those where it's right away. Okay, yeah, this looks like a viral moment. This is probably how it's going to go.
No, all day long. So moving along, let's go ahead and talk about the game of the weekend now. And you mentioned TakeOver's dominance as a program, but they got into a really good one with the Gauchos. Eric, talk to us. What impact did this game have, and how big of a game was it?
I mean, in that you see in our circuits every year, there's some teams that are always on a crash course, right? They may play at session 1 and there's preseason hype. They may not till session 2, they may not till session 3, and they may not till championship weekend. But at some point, these teams are going to get a crack at each other. And there was a lot of buzz about Oladipo TakeOver and Gauchos, right? They're two of the premier teams, not only on the East Circuit, but in the country. And there was significant buzz leading into it where it was like, hey, we've got to make sure that it's on a certain court because there's going to be a crazy fan base there to make sure the logistics are right. And that's really what it turned out to be. I mean, I was covering a different game that was running late. And by the time I got over to the court, not only was it surrounded on the court level, but up top at Spooky Nook, you had people on the railings, 2 people deep trying to watch the game too. And honestly, that's what it's all about for me at the circuit, right? It's like, you want to see the best on the best, right? Let's find out who really are those guys, who really is that team, who can really coach it up in that environment when it's such a high pressure situation. And it ended up really being a good game as well. Obviously, Oladipo TakeOver came out on top. I think the Gauchos in the end will be better for it. And it's just going to have them ready for championship weekend. It's almost like a heavyweight battle where it's like Duke and Carolina in the ACC tournament championship. No matter who wins that game, it's like, okay, cool. Let's see what happens in the NCAA tournament if we get a chance to play each other then, right? And that's what it's going to be at championship weekend, where they're going to be on a crash course again. And I'm excited to see part 2, to be honest. Rob, I don't know what your take on it is, but I was really excited about that game.
Yeah, I was terrified. Like, I loved the game. Like, the game was great. There were so many people that like you couldn't even inbound the ball on the sideline or a baseline. So for me, I'm like, what the hell do I do? Like, you have security there. I had like 3 security guards. I had 2 ops workers just making sure people were pushed back. And I'm like people were doing IG lives. Parents were going nuts. You had obviously like the railings. I don't know how many people were there. I would say over 1,000 people.
Wow.
Right, Eric? Like,
wow. I mean, it's a lot. It was a lot of people. It was a really dope atmosphere for a 7th grade basketball game. And I think that's where people get it twisted who aren't typically in the gym for our events. Like, this isn't just a 7th grade basketball game. This isn't like your school team 7th grade game where you got 15 people in the stands, right? This is a best of the best, who's winner take all, high pressure, everywhere you look. It's a great environment, honestly, and I loved it.
It was 1 versus 2 in made hoops. Sorry to cut you off. It was 1 versus 2 in made hoops and 1 versus 2 in the country, essentially. And I mean, I had to put 3 refs on that game. Like where else do you go in the country that you're going to have 3 refs on a 7th grade basketball game? So I told the refs, like, yeah, I'm not worried. I go, trust me. Like, I'm putting a 3rd ref here. And after the game, they're like, thank you.
Sometimes they don't understand either until they get after it.
Now, look, Rob, I did want to ask you this because, again, you mentioned something like 1 versus 2. You know what I'm saying? A versus B, like the premier cream of the crop. Not even trying to brag, but that's the biggest thing about Made Hoops. We get to see the best of the best here in our weekends that we have. Rob, you've been an event director and been in this role. Like, what does it mean player-wise to see, all right, these are the best of the best that'll be here from years to come? What's that like? We talked about the atmosphere. We talked about the team. We talked about just the entire, I guess you could say, moment being there, but playing and game matchup wise, what's that like for you being able to see that at these events, especially in that game?
So you go through so much during the year of like scheduling, talking to people,
right.
All that. So like to have these games and sit back and watch, whether it be terrified because I'm just waiting like what could possibly go wrong, which is obviously a terrible mindset. But when you do events like, all right, you have option A, but what's option B? And like, because again, it's all about, as excited as the parents are, it's all about kids, the kids. Like the kids on the court is all that I'm worried about and don't want anything to interfere with that. So obviously I'm spoiled in the sense of Made Hoops is surrounded by elite basketball all the time. So like, I can't even say I'm not spoiled, but to sit back and just be like, this is what it's all about, and just watch 2 great teams play with all the parents, the coaches are, screaming with their life on the line. Like, that's what it's about, between the competition, the atmosphere, the exposure and media, all of that in one. And you're just sitting there watching, you're like, man, I didn't schedule this on purpose, but I'm glad it happened this way because this looked great.
I think really what Rob is essentially saying too is the things that you don't see with event, and anyone who runs events from across the country, they know what it is, and not just basketball, events in general. Event management is very difficult logistically, behind the scenes, what it takes to fill the events, relationship building, scheduling, operationally, you name it, everything, content, all that stuff. So it's easy for us to get lost in making sure we're putting out a premier product. So when the event finally comes, that's a time when you have a great game like that, or expressions and take over from session 2. That's a time where you could sit back, if you're someone like Rob, who's the event director, and be like, this is all worth what makes it worth it, right? Like all the hard work, this is what it's for, and you see parents who are excited about it. And after they're thanking you for the experience, and the kids are obviously running around happy about just watching. I mean, some of these 6th grade kids look at the 8th grade kids like they're idols. They're getting pictures with the AJ DeBonsas, the Mel Thomases. Like, you're really making, I'm not trying to make this some corny rant, but it's cool. It's cool to be able to look at it and actually get to appreciate, hey, this is what we've built. This is what all the hard work is for.
Man, yeah, y'all gotta be fired up even more. When you talk about high level basketball, man, this is where it's at. And I love what you said too, E. You know, this is not your average, you know, 7th grade going to school, paying you $10 or however many costs in the game. Now, this is future stars of tomorrow, as real as it gets. And I love that about the Made Hoops brand. I love that about all the teams and all the players that you guys both mentioned. And again, the proof is in the pudding. It speaks for itself. I love that. I want to ask you all this question now, okay? How does the 8th grade 2026 class on the East Coast compare to the league last year? Let's talk about that for a second.
It's down relatively.
Well, so I had this conversation with a colleague yesterday, actually, where I think what it is for us, Rob, I think we're in the same boat too, just because of where we both live. I think in the Northeast, it's a little down, right? You have AJ, who's arguably the #1 player in the country from Boston. And yes, him aside, from Boston to DC, I don't think we have as much talent as we typically do. And I think that's the bulk of our East Coast league, right? I mean, we have a few teams that come from, you know, North Carolina, Atlanta, you know, Canada, but the majority of our teams are, you know, from Boston, New York, Pennsylvania, DC, Baltimore. I think it's a little bit down there, and that makes us feel like the class in general is down, where I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to even out a little bit, especially as we get to see some of these other regions. We know the West Coast is a little bit down because of how strong their group was last year. Right. So yes, essentially the East Coast League is down a little bit, but I think that's just because we're so used to being spoiled by having such strong talent from Washington to New York to Boston to Philly, North Jersey. And as always, at this age group, there's going to be some high level kids who they just haven't gotten there yet. They're going to grow and evolve, and they're going to pop onto the radar in the next, 12 to 24 months. So yes, it's probably a little bit down, but I think some of it is our perspective of being so spoiled in this region, of having such saturated high level basketball talent.
Yeah. The Midwest will be good. I think the Midwest is going to kind of bridge both of the coasts together. I think the class is going to end up being fine, like Eric said. Okay. But there was a ton of depth last year. Like, I mean, from all over the country, as far as the teams that we watched, and you had like Jameer Jones, and you had Jayon Pitts, and Maker, and
Cooper Flag. you had kids. Yeah, you had kids everywhere. Honestly, like Coapee. You had. I mean, there was an abundance of
the boozer.
And some of it is throughout the year too, right? Like,
yeah,
you see these kids in November. By the time you get to July for our 8th grade finale, those kids are completely different players. Some of those kids have grown 1.5 inches, 2 inches. They're stronger. I think earlier in the year last year, you had kids that were already kind of ready-made. You had those strong 6'7", 6'8" wings, Bryson Tiller out of Atlanta. I mean, there was just so much talent that right away you were like bombarded with from everywhere. But Rob, I agree. Like, I think, and it's not only the Midwest, right? What's cool about the spring league is it's the Midwest and it's the South. So you already know we're going to get guys from Texas. You know, we're going to get guys from Georgia, from Florida. Florida's got a strong 2026 class. And there's going to be kids from, Michigan. You have Trevor Smith, who was already 6'8" as a 7th grader last year, who's really talented. There's always kids from Wisconsin, Minnesota, a kid from Iowa. It's going to come together. I think we're just a little spoiled on the East Coast, where it seems like it might be a little bit down in our region.
Because don't forget, like in the spring, you had Hurley, Chris Washington, Kamani, the All Ohio Sumner group, who had, I mean, who were the? I'm drawing a blank on them right now. You're gonna kill me because it's the second weekend in a row.
James Turner.
Yes, and then you had Jaquan Stennis from the family, along with Trevor, Tim Winkler.
Yeah, Tim was already a 6'8", 7th grader. He's now at, I believe, IMG. It'll be there. The 2026 group will, once it all comes together, but specifically East Coast, I think we're a little bit down in the Northeast, but hey, we'll see where it goes.
I think the biggest thing you said though, was like we're comparing that to being spoiled, and then last year being so good. So again, as time progresses, these kids will grow. They'll add more to the games during the season. They're constantly in the gym, and so that will continue to improve as time progresses. But to your main point, it just speaks to the talent pool that we've seen over the years, and that everyone who enjoys youth basketball has seen from the platform that Made has. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on, and we'll keep following this as the season goes on, no doubt about it. I do want to make sure, fellas, that we show some love to the girls. So, Rob, let's go to you really quickly. What went down on the girls' side, man? What can we let the audience know today?
The girls' championship is a complete toss-up. I mean, I'm still taking Takeover and Ron James and co. as the favorite, but I mean, Purvis and Lady Push came and, I mean, no pun intended, made a huge push for championship weekend. So you have them. You have Michigan Storm has been just steadily very good all year. And a major shout out to Coach Steve and CC Storm, who they started off in the Orange Division, and obviously we had a team drop, and I'm like, he's like, hey, I want to go to the Pink Division. I'm like, cool, you got to play 10 games in 2 sessions, and they're like 7-3. So, I mean, there are not too many teams where I'm like, I give a ton of credit to you. I give a ton of credit to him and his girls because of the adversity that they overcame to not being in the league, to getting in the league, to jumping up a level, and then still being a top 4, top 5 team in that pool, speaks to itself. And then, Jersey Gems come in session 2. They have an okay session. I think they might have went 2-3, and then they win out session 3, and now they're in the driver's seat of their pool. So everyone's around that 8-2, 6-4 range. So they have confidence too, because like now you got some teams rolling and they have a ton of confidence, and obviously that's not going to stop until championship weekend, and it's going to make for a very interesting championship weekend once the brackets come out.
Anything can happen in championship weekend. Anything can happen.
A wise man once said, "This is March."
Facts. That is Rob. Rob has stolen that tagline, and it's gotten to the point where he'll literally use it in July at 8th grade finale when things are going crazy. He'll be like, "This is March."
I think I tweeted that out. It was the final 4 of 8th grade finale, and I was like, "This is March," and Eric's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "It still applies. It's March."
I'll allow it.
That tag can be used. Now, it's really cool, man. And I'll let you all know this. The way the girls' game has grown over the past years has been incredible. I think that we're at a place right now where, number one, women's basketball has gotten the recognition it deserved. But 2, these young ladies are playing at a high level at a younger age. And I love that. And you see that here now. I mean, you talked about all those teams, Rob. Let me ask you this. What have you noticed about how the girls' game has grown over the past few years here at May?
We've definitely taken a jump in the number of teams that have came in, and a number of teams from different regions that have joined us.
Right.
So like you start off pretty local, you got the Jersey, PA, New York, but then you get, the Floridas, the Canadas, the New Hampshires, and more so than anything else, I like the growth of the girls' game, and I just like to be a part of it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not anything crazy where I'm like, I want this I just like being in the girls' game, growing with them, and kind of just letting them do everything, and like, cool, I want to help and set up a platform and let you do your thing, and then just kind of take a back seat and then watch it grow and just be like, this is pretty cool, that they deserve all the credit for the efforts that they've put in to grow the game. I mean, Like, I'm not trying to take any credit away from them. That is all them, and all their growth is totally credit to them.
Nice. Good deal. Yeah, these young ladies are getting after it, man. They're playing at a high level, and I love to see it, man. It's dope to watch. It really is. Really quickly, too, I want to go ahead and just shout out the Future Fringe events. You don't want to talk on the winners of that event. A bunch of young kids that came out to play as well that did their thing. From either one of you two guys, man, what programs can we shout out for the Future Fringies this past weekend?
Scholars 5th grade had a major win over DPS. That was one of those games where it was like a appointment TV for 5th grade basketball. You had the Garden State Warriors win the 7th grade. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I've known him since he was over with another group in Futures Frenzy. Wow. And so he was originally with Dragon Army, and they came to Futures Frenzy my first year when I was in the back gym, and they got beat up. Like, no game was close. Mm-hmm. And he was, I'm coming back. I was like, all right, cool, come back. Like, whatever. Like, you'll figure it out. And then, fast forward 2-3 years later, now he's winning a championship at the 7th grade level. Yeah. So EEP was great for 6th grade. They after they won, they looked at me. They're like, "Yeah, we'll see you in Made Hoops next year." I started laughing. I was like, they weren't even about winning. They were just worried about pointing at me. And I was like, you know what? You guys have that right to point at me all you want. And then Team ALO won the 8th grade division. So it was a very competitive weekend, especially on Sunday with the playoffs. A lot of these teams are familiar with each other from marquee hoops. So, you got to see some teams that are in the same league as marquee hoops, but haven't played each other yet, or they played each other and there's some beef already between them. So that was cool to see. Just there's some extra animosity.
Nah, I think that story is dope, Rob. I mean, again, you talk about when teams are able to develop over the years and they come back and they were coming at you like a parent in the stand, Rob. They were coming for you to make sure you knew what time it was, man. The young fellas worked hard.
But that's what I want it to be about. Like, I want, like I said, like, I want teams that weren't in Made not to get discouraged. Yeah. I want them to come prove themselves. And, EEP, they're a prime example of it. And even, the Warriors are an example of it. And ALO. I mean, all those teams were. But for them not to get in 1 year, come to one of our events, win it, and point at me, I'm like, you deserve all the right to do that. And I encourage it. Like, I'm not like, I enjoyed that. I like the competition. I like the competitiveness and what they bring out.
Man, shout out to all 3 of those teams, man. That's what we love this podcast for. We get to show love to the teams being out there and just being able to go ahead and do what they can do. All right, so now to end this show off the right way, we got to go ahead and talk about some of these East Coast Championship weekend brackets. They're set, okay? So who do y'all have winning the league? And again, like, no bias. Y'all might get Twitter fingers pointed at you guys for your predictions, but who do you have winning the league, man? Like, each league individually, talk to me. What do y'all think is going down?
I think sometimes it's like the NCAA tournament where if you're looking at the bracket itself, you'll trip yourself up because you're almost trying to like talk yourself into like, ooh, this team's hot. They may upset this number 1 seed or this number 2 seed. For me, it's like, I'm not even going that route. I'm going to go with what I've watched this year. Right. So regardless of where this lands on what the matchups are, whatever we get, 8th grade red, I'm going with Team Takeover. Okay. 8th grade green, I'm going with DNA Elite. 7th grade blue, I'm going with Oladipo Takeover. 7th grade purple, I'm going with the New York Gauchos. And then 6th grade gray, I'm going with the NJ Scholars.
Okay. Rob, we always got to ask you, do you agree or kind of agree or disagree with Eric?
I never agree with Eric.
That's a fact.
So I do agree with what he's saying with the takeover for 8th grade red, but I'm not going with them because I don't want to be that guy. So
what, the guy who's right?
Hey,
Hey, yo, who was right about finale though? I'm still gonna hang my head over that.
You got a podcast to prove it?
Talking spicy to you, Rob.
So who are you gonna go with, Rob? You going with expressions?
Why are you trying to speed me up now?
We need answers, Rob. No, we need answers.
No, I'm going scholars.
Ooh, okay. All right. We're going off the grid for that one.
And then 8th grade, I'm going DNA. I think that's a relatively easy choice. I think for 7th grade, I'm going Takeover Oladipo. I'm going Gauchos for 7th grade. For 6th grade, I'm gonna go BABC.
Okay.
Wow. Hey, I heard a lot about BABC this weekend. I heard a lot about BABC.
They've done a good job this year. They've put together some good groups, man. BABC is doing their thing for sure. We just need to remember to revisit this after championship weekend. We'll tally up what really went down on the courts. Unless Rob had more wins than me, then we're gonna nix that part.
Oh yeah, can we add that to this? Like,
yeah, sure, yeah, for sure.
oh, cool, yeah. All right, cool. Now, well, I got to still do my 8th. Actually, the girls' side.
Okay.
Who's winning? So I'm going with Takeover for the girls' 8th grade in the pink division. The orange division, I'm going with the Shore Shots, who lost to Maryland Shooting Stars Sunday. I think they'll bounce back and win the orange division. The 7th grade, I'm going Durant.
Okay.
6th grade, I'm going with BWSL Lady Neptune. I'm going to go undefeated. I'm going to be the first guy to go undefeated in both boys and girls basketball picks. It's going to be crazy.
There we go. I'm with the confidence. Go ahead, do your thing.
Nah, man. Stand 10 toes down, Rob. Make sure you confident, brother. No take is wrong in Rob's world. Ain't that right?
I'm a I'm a king in my own mind.
Look, I can't wait to revisit this. That's going to be the highlight of that episode after championship weekend. I'm going to pull up all the receipts and we're going to run down each pick. Okay. And then we're going to have a tally score between my man Eric, my man Rob, to see who had the most answers correct in regards to these team predictions. Because it's going down championship weekend. Man, it's going to be good. My only request is that, man, we keep that same intensity that we had in that game earlier this past weekend. Again, the one that was the big game of the week between Takeover and Gauchos. And my thought process is there'll be plenty of games like that. But let me ask you guys, what are your expectations, I guess, looking forward to championship weekend? What do you all see atmosphere and environment-wise?
I see an ice bath in our future with the amount of running that we're going to do and the amount of people that, like I said, going into session 3, it was people are going to hate made hoops. They're going to hate the basketballs. They're going to hate the teams, the refs, and the courts. I think I'm taking all of that and I'm doubling down for championship weekend. Unless it's the team that wins, they're going to love made hoops. They're going to love the refs, the basketballs, the courts, and the staff.
Talk to me, Eric. How about you, brother?
It's a culmination, man. It's a November, December, January, February. Is it March officially championship weekend? Yeah. So basically it's a 5-month journey for these guys, right? And it's basically junior EYBL, right? They've worked, they've trained. It's blood, sweat, and tears. A ton of emotion. That's what it's always going to be. And it's awesome. It's truly awesome to see the kids who end up winning and the way that they react when they win, between the kids, the coaches, the parents. I mean, it's a really cool experience. And honestly, the kids who don't win, it's kind of cool because we've had moments in the past where I don't even remember what year it was. It may have been 3 years ago, where our 7th grade championship game was probably a top 3 to top 5. Maybe no, I'd probably say top 3 game I had seen with Made, where it was Boo Williams and Takeover for the 7th grade championship. It went to overtime and Boo Williams won. I don't know if it was at the buzzer, but it was like a 1-point win. And it was a back and forth game that was incredible. Both teams deserved to win the game. And when TakeOver lost, obviously they were like so upset about it. And their coach literally made them go over and watch Boo Williams accept their trophy and do all that. Cause they were like, this is a learning experience. We're never going to go through this again. Right. So he literally had his guys watch that. Mm-hmm. And then the next year, TakeOver won the 8th grade league. So it was like, it's about learning experiences too, for these guys and teaching them, hey man, in life, that's just, sometimes that's how it happens. No matter how hard you work or how well you're prepared, sometimes it's not going to go your way, but you take that and you figure it out and you build on it. And it's, I think you'll see more of that for this championship weekend, where there's going to be kids and teams that end up on the wrong side of the championships, and they're just going to use it to fuel themselves for next year and beyond.
I mean, you are emotional. Who hurt you?
I'm a deep guy, Rob. I'm a deep guy.
Show a picture of Stephon Diggs when they played the Chiefs 2 years ago. I'm just going to keep saying add pictures. That's what TakeOver did. No, I mean, but who hurt you actually though? Like, we'll have to talk.
We'll talk offline.
Facts. Well, look, man, fellas, thanks for y'all's time, man. Now, this was definitely good for episode 3. Great content, nonetheless, from this past weekend. It's spooky new, great action again, nonetheless, and more momentum, more steam, more engine power as we head to this championship weekend coming soon in the next month, man, in March. So we're looking forward to that. Everyone, thanks for tuning in to this episode. Episode 3 was great. If you missed the first part again, fast forward and go back. We had Book Richardson on. That was fantastic. And as always, we had Eric Hampford Rob Noonan, our director of scouting and our events director here at Made Hoops, who did a phenomenal job of breaking down session 3. So thank you all for tuning in. As always, I'm your host, Austin Smith. This is the Made Hoops podcast. Stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe, because you never know who will be on next. See y'all soon in episode number 4. Peace.